like to introduce to you Emma from the band Dying Wish. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Absolutely my pleasure. We're here to talk about your band's new album. We'll get to that in a moment. But what I want to sort of get from you, start with, is a origin story of the band.
Right.
Just purely because you're a new band to me, probably to many of my listeners as well. But if we can get some background and
Yeah,
go from there.
absolutely. We are a band from Portland, Oregon called Dying Wish. We formed early in 2018, put out a demo, and then collaborated on a split with the band from Serration, or sorry, a band called Serration from
Yeah.
Alberta, Canada. Um, and then we kind of hit the ground running. I was featured on the Knocked Loose record, which was kind of a pivotal moment for the band. And then Brian returned the favor and did a song for us, and that's on our upcoming record that comes out on October 1st via Sharptone Records.
Nice.
Um, yeah, pretty quick and easy. I'm sure we'll get into more questions, and I can give
Yeah, I
you a
mean,
more
it's.
in-depth answer.
Sorry, say again.
Oh, I'm sure we can. I can elaborate through questions.
Yeah, no, that's all good. It's all good. So yeah, I mean, let's talk about the album. It's called A Fragment of a Bitter Memory. Like you say, it's out on October 1st on Sharptone. Um, that label are very diverse in what they've got on their roster at the moment. I've been interviewing quite a few bands from there. Some by accident, didn't realise they're on there, and some directly through Nuclear Blast and all that lot, of which it's a parent label of. But yeah, how did you find yourself on that label generally?
Yeah, well, we knew that we wanted to sign to a label, and so we picked up a manager, our manager Tom, and one of the first things he said was, "I think you guys would be a great fit on Sharptone, and I know that they're wonderful and work very hard for their bands, and that's exactly what we need right now." So he hit them up, and it was pretty much effortless from there. They were super into the idea and believed in everything that we have done, and have supported us wholeheartedly since.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. It's good to know because I don't go into the labels so much. I know a few people in and around it, obviously the PR people and all that kind of stuff, but actually, sort of getting the inner workings of them is kind of cool. And knowing that it
Hmm.
was effortless is always a good sign. Making it as easy as they can for the artist as well, which is great. Um, but yeah, the album. You've got a couple of tracks out at the moment. You've got the title track out. And you've also got another one called Until Morning Comes, which is actually one of my favourite tracks off the album.
Awesome.
Um,
Thank you.
I've been fortunate enough to have been furnished with the full version, thanks to the PR people and whatnot. They've entrusted me with that, and I've had it on in my cars. I do normally listen to it and in my headphones and stuff like that, and I'm really, really, really enjoying it. Um, and where would you sort of cite your so I don't I always try and go away from this sort of question, but where do you cite your influences from? Because I can hear a few
Hmm.
in there, and I was just sort of wondering where you get yours from.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of love this question, honestly.
Okay,
First
good.
of all, thank you. I'm glad that you like the record. But yeah, I mean, it's very obvious that we're nodding to a lot of early 2000s metal and metalcore.
Yes.
But our guitar player Sam is very influenced. He writes most of the music by bands like Black Dahlia Murder, Killswitch Engage, Bleeding Through, At the Gates. Um, so kind of a variety of bands that flourished from that scene of like this newer sound. We're kind of trying to refresh it with our own approach.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, that's something that I'm loving. I mean, I've what I'm what because that era was my I'm aging myself now, but that was my 20s. Um, bands like
Hmm.
Bleeding Through, Atreyu, Killswitch, all those bands from back then. They're still around today, to be fair. I know Atreyu are. I had Atreyu on the show quite recently, which is kind of cool. And obviously Killswitch are still, and they got Jesse back in, and Howard's still kind of, well, he was there with one of their tracks and stuff. Anyway, but I'm loving this what people that were kind of obviously, like yourself, growing up during that time, you were a lot younger than me by the looks of things. So, but what I'm loving is these bands coming through, because there's a lot of the new metal influenced bands as well. So bands that were influenced by the likes of like the early Korn, Biscuit, Linkin Park, all that kind of stuff, and the sort of heavier side of that, Mudvayne, things like that. But then you've got the metalcore things coming through, like yourselves, and that's exactly where it took me back to. It took me back to listening to the likes of Bleeding Through, and Killswitch back then, and you have put your own obviously your own flavor on it as well, which is what you need to do. You don't want to be a clone of those
Exactly.
bands. But what was great when I was listening to it, even my wife said, is this someone, is this someone from back then? And I was like, no, this is the band I'm chatting to. And she really enjoyed it as well. Like, it's saying it's really kind of taken her back that way as well. So that's really cool. I'm loving this sort of surgence of bands like yourselves that have taken the, because those were kind of, like I say, my 20s band. My influential bands were bands from on the cusp of like the 80s, 90s, I would say, when I was that sort of young, impressionable at that point. So Guns N' Roses, Iron Maiden, all that kind of stuff. But then I went into kind of like the New York hardcore scene, where it was kind of like Vision Disorder, Earth Crisis, all that kind of stuff. Then into the metalcore, which obviously came out of that. And then, yeah, just sort of seeing this circle come back around, it's great. I love
Mhm.
it.
Yes, very. It is very cool. And with the way that the world is too, it gives kind of like an opportunity, because we see ourselves, we all grew up in in the background of hardcore. So yes, the Earth Crisis and the Madballs, and
Yeah.
those are the kind of bands that we grew up listening to. So um obviously Earth Crisis has always kind of had a message,
Yes.
and that's something that we have wanted to implement into our music as well, as like making sure that we have messages and whatnot.
And what messages are you portraying into your music? What do you want people to kind of get from it? Because obviously Earth Crisis and stuff like that, and back then, and the sort of straight edge stuff like that, very much not so much on the political edge, but more on the sort of like living, healthy living, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that whole thing back then as well. I was very much into that sort of ethos, if you will. Sort of like keeping sort of, drug clean, drink clean, or whatever, and not eating meat and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Over the years, I've kind of waned on that slightly, but I still don't drink. I still don't do drugs. But the meat
Good
eating,
on you.
yeah, but the meat eating, that's something that I'm working on right now. I've got a lot of influential vegan friends around me, and they're trying their best. So
We have another one right here, so.
okay, excellent, excellent. So is that the kind of thing you're putting across in your music? Is it that kind of like clean living, I suppose, is the the
um I
thing in
mean,
that,
not
or is it?
necessarily. I I'm vegan, and a few of the guys are straight edge and whatnot. Our message more so is about you know uh our politics and what we believe in, as far as like our radicalism goes,
Yeah,
and speaking about mental health and living through trauma, and just various other themes that are on the record, or things that we find that are important to talk about, and important about
yeah,
piece of who we are as a band.
yeah. No, definitely, definitely. I caught the sort of like the mental health side of things as well. This is something I like to. So I like to talk about on the show. Let's talk about it in general, because it always helps to talk. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
no, that's something I feel very strongly. Is that's the big thing that I've kind of like taken away from a lot of my musical sort of side of things, is that mental health aspect, and noticing, the patterns that obviously some people go through, stuff like that, and trying to help them, trying to reach out, trying to be there. I'd rather hear about their issues than hear about them, doing something silly. Um,
Same.
that side of things, and from someone who's suffers from mental health issues and stuff like that as well. That's, there's some days where I'm not, I'm just like not approachable, which is difficult because of the nature of the work that I do as well. But it's
Mm.
something that my wife picks up on the signs with me. Apparently I let off the certain aspects, and she knows when to kind of like come in and say, hey, you feeling all right? And I sort of, I can pick up on other people's and not so much my own, if that makes sense. But it's something that I'm very say enthusiastic for. I don't think that's the right word, but you know, something I really want to sort of like just reduce the stigma, I suppose, is probably the word on that.
You're passionate.
Say again.
You're passionate.
Yes, that's the word. Yes, sorry.
Yes. No, don't be.
But yeah, no, that's something that I've had a few sort of artists on here like yourselves that, you know, go through various stages, and you can sort of see from the sort of like the big sort of people we lost within, say, the metal scene, for instance. Obviously we lose people from every kind of like walk of life with this, but you know, you can see sort of like with sort of like Chester Bennington, for instance, the kind of, you know, the messages were there in the music that not a lot of people picked up on or didn't until it was too late. And obviously that's down to sort of needing those people to open up as well, because you have to help yourself to a certain degree. But obviously I've always said I'd you know, I'd rather try and fix the issue than wait for that permanent solution to try and, you know, then you can't sort it at all. So, but yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And go
on. Yeah, no, something you had mentioned was, you know, how it's difficult when you're in this line of work, you know, if you have depression. I've definitely been depressed on tour, and that's really hard because it's like, you know, I'm depressed right now, but so it's like, it's stressful to like, you know, have to, you know, your brain is so focused, like, or not focused, like while you have this really important thing right here, like for example, going on a full US tour with a band called Motionless in White, but at the same time, you know, there's all of this clouding in your head from this depression that makes you focus on everything else that's not important at the moment when this should be the important thing. So I totally understand that.
Yeah, no, definitely. I was in a band myself back in the early 2000s, and through one stage of it I was going through quite a breakup, if you will, and I found myself being more destructive to myself. Like, I used the stage as a pressure release, but I ended up doing stupid stuff like running into a wall or you know, head banging till I couldn't lift my head up, just sort of trying to get rid of that noise out of my head. Whereas I learned how to use that from now. Like, I'm not as self-destructive, if that makes sense. You know, I can still use it as a pressure release. I use DJing as that at the moment, because that is my main sort of performance aspect now. But whereas I used to rely on it for that, I don't anymore. I've found other ways of removing that from my thing, so I can concentrate and actually enjoy what I do. So whether it's playing various records to people, or if I'm ever back in a band doing whatever role I am in there. But yeah, I've found it, like, especially I've noticed it with a lot of my kind of like friends and colleagues and stuff within the industry, and how they deal with it on stage, and how that pressure release, I can see that destructive pattern as well. And it's difficult to sort of, you know, because you don't want to sort of go up to them and say, hey, don't do that, you know, because you don't want to tell them what to do, but you want to sort of try and get that out of them, because I hurt myself, you know. It was that kind of, you know, there's no getting away with it. I hit my head a few times, and it didn't do me any good. So
yeah, I was going through a similar situation. We were on tour, and I had just gone through a breakup, and you know, I was just like very disconnected from my body in a lot of ways. And I took my mic and I smashed it into my head during one of the songs, and yeah, I mean, that hurt. But I was like so disconnected, I didn't even think about it. And then I was laying awake like on somebody's floor that night, like, oh, my head hurts, like. And then it kind of came to this, you know, I came to this realization where this can be a coping mechanism, you know, playing shows and whatnot, but like not that way. So I totally understand what you mean.
Yeah, no, definitely. And what your guys, we'll sort of get back onto your sort of band side of things now, but it's what are your guys' plans ahead? Because it's really difficult to sort of see, because like here in the UK, obviously, I mean, everyone went through pandemic different. Well, I'll say differently. Everyone's going through it in stages. So here we've kind of had lockdowns and not lockdowns. Finally, this summer we got our live music back. Now I know in the States there is because I used to live over in over there, not in your part, unfortunately, over in Florida. I was there for a good long time, but
Hmm.
I've got a lot of friends there, and I know the sort of like COVID situation where they are, where it's kind of things are still open, but they're not. You know, there's like mandates for masks in schools, but they're not. The governor's saying no. You're over in Michigan, which is kind of a little bit further out. um,
We're in Oregon, which is
Oregon,
as far away as you can get from
yeah,
Florida, which is okay.
pretty much. Yeah, no, it's pretty good. You don't want to. Yeah, Florida's the crazy state.
Yeah.
I survived it for a good sort of 5-6 years, so you know it was all right while I was there, to be fair. But
Hmm.
but yeah, how has it been for you guys? Obviously, you must have plans coming up that are kind of yes and knowing, because I know a lot of big bands are touring, but then they're getting hit with COVID. I think Kiss were the latest ones that I saw. I think Jonathan Davis of Korn is having an issue with COVID right now. You know, guys at your level, how has it affected you?
I mean, we are all vaccinated, but at the same time, I do feel pretty fearful, of being on tour and catching COVID.
Mm.
So, we have COVID protocols where, obviously we're wearing a mask all the time,
Yeah,
if we're interacting with anyone else. And it's gonna be very strange for me being up on stage not wearing a mask, but also looking back at people who may not be wearing masks. Because to me, that's still something I'm not used to.
yeah,
Um, and gives me kind of an anxiety. But then I have to be in the headspace of I'm performing right now. That's what matters, So um, it's going to be interesting, to say the least. But we're trying to, we're not doing merch table meet and greets, which is unfortunate. Because we want to interact with crowds. We're a new band, that's really important for us. But like,
yeah,
we'll be meeting people outside, if anything. You know what I mean? So not everyone assumed that. I mean, we shouldn't have assumed that live music was going to come back to normal. And there are places like Florida that never even. I don't even think they shut down in the first place. You know what I
no,
mean? So those are places that it's more worrisome to play, because people are going to be less mindful about how the virus impacts bands who are touring and going to a different city every night, and how us catching COVID results in us going home and tours over, and how
yeah,
that affects our careers as musicians. So it's really difficult. So, but we have to try at least. So
yes, yeah, no,
that's
definitely,
where we're at.
yeah, no, I felt the same way going into because I hadn't obviously DJ'd in a year and a half, maybe longer,
Hmm.
but 18, yeah, 18, 19 months. But and the first time was last month. Went back in there, and it was so strange, like because you're like suddenly around loads of people, and it's people are dancing and breathing, and you're kind of like you can almost see the COVID in the air. No, but
Hmm.
obviously we have protocols here as well. We have obviously an app that track and trace app and stuff, and I'm fully vaccinated, which is that's a great start for me on that front. I got it early, which was good as well. um,
Hmm.
but there is that thing, and I don't want to end up going out to one of these places, bring it back to the family or anything like that, because I've got young kids,
Right.
and they're not vaccinated at the moment. They're very young, so they're not vaccinated at the moment.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just sort of there is that sort of worry, and I'm looking. I've got a live show that I'm going to in October, in fact. So that's going to be my first sort of like live gig to go to. So that's going to be a real kind of tester for me, because I've heard that one is sold out. So,
Right. Oh yeah.
but no, it's just
I work. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no. I was just going to say, it's like, I mean, bands even at the big, no, it doesn't care what kind of band you are. Either, because I've seen bands of all levels get hit. Obviously, you'd think Kiss would have a bubble around them, or even Korn. These
Hmm.
are the sort of bands that have, you know, the money to have that. But yeah, it even got them. So
Hmm.
it's yeah, it's as long as you've like got those, you know, you're vaccinated, and that's the good start. It doesn't stop you getting it, but it does alleviate the symptoms, which is
Right.
what we need.
And I believe it makes it so that you're less transmittable as well when
Yes.
you're vaccinated. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I work at a venue here,
Okay.
a 500 cap club, and we've had a show sold out hip hop show, and one of the scariest nights of my life because like these kids they were just running around not wearing masks, like everything was totally fine. And so it shows like that, that freak me out, like I literally felt like I could see the COVID like in
Yeah.
the air, you know what I mean? So that was scary. But then I went to Between the Buried and Me a couple nights ago, a older crowd, more respectful, everyone wearing masks, and I was like, okay, like this makes me feel safe. So as long as we can find somewhere where everyone's happy and practicing the right things,
Yeah.
um, then I think the future of live music is secured. But I don't think as of right now the future of live music is secure. So
Yeah.
um, that's the scary part.
That is the scary part, especially for a band like yourselves, like a new band. You're looking out to
Hmm.
get out there and everything, but I'm sure it'll come back like to a certain level. Anyway, I think a lot of bands are still going ahead with their tours, and there are ways you can stay completely safe on tour. Just got to keep that bubble, but then the sort of like you say, the meet and greets. That's where it kind of gets tricky, because you do want to meet these people that have made the effort to come out and see you, and give them the sort of like FaceTime, if you will, with
Yeah.
that. But yeah, I think meeting outside is probably the better option, just purely because you've got the air around you to move whatever around, and all that kind of stuff. So
Hmm.
did you guys do anything during the sort of like lockdown, or did you do any live streaming or anything like that? Did you have the opportunity to do that?
We didn't. We had talked about it, but we put our priorities elsewhere, filming music videos and practicing, so that when we did hit the road, we would have a perfected live show.
Yeah. Cool. and
Yeah.
and go on.
We had talked about doing a live stream, and then we just ended up getting so busy preparing for tour that I just think that it fell to the back of our minds, and they
Yeah.
kept adding dates. Just, it was like we were supposed to be on tour for 2 weeks, and now we're on tour for like almost 5.5. So
Oh wow.
yeah. Hmm.
Excellent. Excellent. And
Yeah, it's
obviously
great.
it's a US tour, US and that sort of area, territory. Do you have any plans at any sort of like level of coming over here
As soon as possible.
as soon as possible?
Yeah. When that will be, not sure, but it's definitely in the conversation. We're supposed to do next year in Europe with Lionheart, Terror, and Get the Shot.
Cool.
And there's no UK dates on that, but this is a conversation that we've had,
Yeah.
that we want to make sure that if we're there, we might as well make a trip
Yes.
across the pond and go to the UK. So
Yeah.
absolutely on our radar, and we would love to play there.
Excellent. Excellent. Yeah. No, that's good to hear. I mean, coming to the UK is a lot more difficult than it was about a year ago. Not because
Right.
of COVID, because of something else. Um,
Hmm.
um,
Heard that.
yeah, yeah. But it's making it a lot trickier for overseas bands, even homegrown bands, to be fair, to tour overseas, because of extra
Hmm.
tariffs now, extra taxes that we didn't have before. And obviously the same for you guys coming over from the States. It's still, you need various things separate from going to Europe, which opens you up to so many different countries, and now no longer us, which is a pain. But hopefully, there's enough sort of like activity going on here, and hopefully they'll look at that and help resolve that. Hopefully, I say
Hmm.
hopefully. I don't have much trust in our government, but you can only
Neither
deal.
do I.
No,
So,
you can only kind of deal with the hand that you're given in that respect.
mhm,
But there's enough people making enough noise, to kind of get them to talk about it at least, and then get the
good.
ball rolling from there, which is good. So hopefully by the time you guys get over here, that will be resolved, and it won't be such a hit on finances. I think is the main thing, that you want to kind of avoid with that, especially
Hmm.
if you need
Yeah.
additional visas and all that kind of rubbish. Um, but Emma, I've got a couple of questions left for you, if that's all right, and then I'll let you go for the rest of your day. um,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
but what I've got here is these are sort of my generic questions, if you will. But I ask pretty much everyone that I've had on the show these to a certain. Well, I kind of alter some of them now and again, but doesn't matter. Um, what I want to find out from you are your three most pivotal albums. Now, what I mean by that is not like your top three albums. I'm talking about an album that maybe during your childhood you suddenly thought, "Ha, I want to sing like that," or "I want to be a singer." What was that album that did that, or what was you know, those sort of like an album your parents played you, or something like that that you really love.
I think number one was to put on my radar that I would ever maybe want to be a rock star was Avril Lavigne, and I'm trying to
Cool.
remember which one. It's the one with all the hits.
Let Go.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, she was an icon, and it's called Let Go.
Yeah.
That yes, yes. Sorry, you said that, and I was
No,
trying
it's all right. It's all
to.
right.
Also, that poor girl, but yeah. So I would say Avril Lavigne, Let Go, and then let's see. For me, probably this is so strange, but rotting out. Well, I guess I got into like heavy music through um like it was like Bring Me the Horizon, Count Your Blessings was like the one that I
Okay.
heard, and I was like, oh, this is something I've never heard before, because I kind of was just listening to like classic metal and like
Yeah.
classic rock. Um and then it got me into like so many bands through there, through
Nice.
that era of bands. And then when I started listening to hardcore music, I'd listen to Comeback Kid, and I'd listen to like Have Heart. But the album, it's not even on Spotify anymore. If even if it was, by Rotting Out, This Is Just a Life. It's their first release, and I want to say it came out in like 2008, and it's like their demo.
Okay.
But that was like the most pissed off, like just unapologetic hardcore record that I'd heard as like a 15-year-old kid, 16-year-old kid.
Nice.
So it sounds really strange because like I've talked to somebody in Rotting Out, and I was like, This Is Just a Life is one of my favorite hardcore records of all time. And they were like, that's so weird because, obviously they don't play songs from that and haven't in years and years. Um, but yeah, so those are pivotal moments in which I kind of like change direction and like, how I see music or what I listen to and what I'm influenced by.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I mean, Avril Lavigne has been or still is a perfect gateway for a lot of people into
Hmm.
kind of like the heavier music. Obviously it's very pop fueled, um, punk kind of pop punk, if you will. Um, but yeah, I mean, she's gone through a lot. um,
Yeah.
and there's the whole like conspiracy theory that it's not the real Avril Lavigne. It's much like the Andrew WK one as well. Which I love these little conspiracy. I know they're not true, but I love these conspiracy things. But
Hmm.
yeah, no, she's been like heavily influential on a lot of people I've spoken to recently. I had Sumo Psycho on my show. Um,
Mm.
I think it was it was a few months ago, in fact. And yeah, she was just rapping lyrical about Avril Lavigne and how she opened up the doors to basically rock music for her, or punk rock in that respect.
Hmm.
And again, with Bring Me the Horizon, they're one that obviously they're from here, so we know them quite well on that front. But yeah, they're another gateway band now. A lot of people, like back when they were sort of a bit more on the sort of like thrashy core side of things, a lot of people cite them as heavily influenced. And now, because they've kind of popularized their sound, I think the way it is, or evolved, I think is the term I like to use. They're bringing a lot more people into that, because people are going back and listening to their first albums, and like it's totally different to what they do now to a certain degree.
Hmm. Hmm.
And their last EP was just amazingly heavy. The one with Kingslayer on it, and they had Amy Lee on there, and Baby Metal, and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, they're just a band that I mean, I've known about them for a long time, obviously. But yeah, it's great seeing these bands, and I've never heard of Rotting Out. So this is new for me. This is something that I'm going to discover myself now.
Awesome.
So I was, like I said, I was very much into my hardcore side of things. So there was obviously a lot of bands that I missed out on. But
Yeah.
this is one of them.
So
So I'm gonna go look them up on one of the streaming services that I've got a subscription to, and if I can't find it, I'll source it from somewhere. So
yeah, I think Street Prowl is probably the record that I would say people listen to first.
yeah,
That was huge when it came out. But then you can't find This Is Just a Life on Spotify, so I listened to it on YouTube.
okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
I can put up with that. That's absolutely fine.
Mhm.
And I'll have a look. I'm on Apple Music, so I'll see if it's on there. But yeah, no, definitely, I'm going to check them out because like I said, I hadn't heard of them, and this is what this question's about. It's kind of going back and listening to albums that have influenced people, just to sort of see where they were at that point, but also potentially discover something new. That's why I never ask for like the top 3 albums, because they're always like Appetite, Black Album, or never mind.
Right.
And you can get that like trinity of bands in there all the time. But no, that's great. That's great. Oh, that's I'm definitely going to go check them out. So thank you for that. So finally, my last question for you: what are your hobbies away from music? So when you're not doing anything Dying Wish on that front, what is your kind of go-to?
I go to the gym. I
Cool.
lift weights. When basketball season is happening, that is all that I care about. So obsessed with basketball. Love lifting weights. Honestly though, and this was what was so difficult about the pandemic, is I work in live music, I book
Yeah.
shows for fun, I play in a band. So like that was difficult because suddenly everything that I know how to do and what to do with on a daily basis just like disappeared into thin air. And so I had to like find new hobbies. And yeah, I mean, lifting weights is really the one that stuck with me. The rest of them, I picked up roller skates and, tried to embroider and whatever else. And that got old really quick, but that's it. Sorry,
Cool.
I'm
No,
done.
that's all right. That's all right. And who are your team when it comes to basketball?
Portland Trail Blazers.
Nice.
Yeah, it's been a rough it's been a rough couple of years, but we have our generational talent in our point guard Damian Lillard, and so hopefully we can keep him and build a solid team around him and win a championship while we still have him. But um, I'm not too optimistic about that because there's a lot of super teams in the NBA right now. It's hard to compete with when you
Yeah.
can just like buy a championship.
Yeah. No, it was one sport that when I was living over in Florida, I didn't have a basketball team where I was living. So the
Mhm.
nearest one was the Orlando Magic. Um, but we had obviously we now have a Super Bowl winning team, but we had the ice hockey as well, which is the Tampa Bay Lightning, who do exceptionally well.
Mm.
And they lifted the Stanley Cup while I was there, which was great. And yeah, the Tampa Bay Rays, who are doing all right now, but
Yeah,
they weren't not very good generally. But
yeah.
yeah, because I was over in that Tampa area, so I had that like all the American sports, if you will, kind of you know thrown at me. Um,
Hmm.
but yeah, not a basketball, and I like basketball. Um, and it's not a major sport here either, which is a pain.
Yeah,
But
right. It's
my
pretty big
wife
in Europe.
loves playing it and stuff like that. So it's yeah, it's I'm gonna have to try and see if I can source and watch it this time over here. See who's playing it, see what channel it's on. So, um,
Yeah.
but Emma, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time. Good luck with your album. It's called Fragments of a Bitter Memory. Everyone, go listen to it when it's out, October 1st. Go stream it. Go pre-save it. Do if it because it's going to come out before the album's out. So go listen to the tracks that are available. go pre-save the link if you're doing all that, or pre-order physical copies. That is a thing for you guys as well. So are you doing CDs and stuff, obviously?
CD
Yeah.
and vinyl.
And vinyl.
If you're, yeah, I mean, we are actually we have the CDs with us right now, so we're going to be selling those at our merch table. But yeah, if you pre-order it now, you'll get it when, I'm pretty sure on release day, if you pre-order it through Sharptone. So
yeah, cool, awesome. Emma, have a fantastic rest of your day, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good one. Talk to you soon.
Bye bye.
All right. Bye.